Hey guys, we're going to go into Ruth chapter 2 today. It's Tuesday Truth. We hope you liked last time, and feel free to continue commenting and letting us know kind of what you think of it or what you'd like to cover next. So last time we talked about Ruth and this initial period where Naomi sort of is forsaken, loses her husband, her sons, and Ruth yet. Even though Naomi has nothing, Ruth decides to cling to her and to follow her back into the promised land. It said, "So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, went with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest." So they're getting into Israel. It's in the time of the barley harvest, and Naomi needs to figure out how she's going to provide for herself. So Ruth, being an able-bodied woman, decides that she's going to go out into the field and she's going to start gathering some of the extra grains of wheat so that they have something to eat at night. Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was part of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. Notice that, she's in this field, and the text says she just happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz. It's almost like you can like sense the irony in that text. God is actually meeting Ruth's faith here with providence, with provision. She demonstrated incredible faith to come, right, with Naomi. And God already is starting to meet her with provision as Boaz takes notice of her. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." And then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back from Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. Now, what you need to understand here is that Ruth was really in incredible danger in gleaning from the field in this way. It would not have been uncommon for young, worthless men to take advantage of women in a field, especially when it's a woman who has essentially no family, who's all by herself out in the wilderness. And really easily, these guys could have taken advantage of her and never had to pay a single consequence. So Ruth's faith here was really extraordinary in taking this step. And God's provision in protecting her from worthless men was extraordinary as well. Because Boaz was such a great leader that he had actually led his men to be men of great character and respect and integrity, so that they didn't do that. They didn't take advantage of Ruth. They allowed her to glean. So when Boaz hears that Ruth's been gleaning all day long with her, he says to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you?" You see that? It's almost like if she had gone to a different field, she very likely would have been violated. "And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" Remember, Ruth is a Moabite woman, and she would be essentially hated by most Israelites. They were natural-born enemies of Israel. There was bad blood between them. And so Ruth was expecting likely to be violated, likely to be mistreated, likely to be cast aside. But Boaz and his men treat her kindly. And listen to why she's treated this way. It wasn't because she was a total babe, where he just was like, "Man, she is hot." No, it's actually because of her character. Boaz answered her, All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." And then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." So you see, Boaz has heard about her faith that she demonstrated in Moab. And this has caused him to deeply respect her and deeply want to provide for her. Isn't that amazing? What Ruth had done in a different country, probably being scorned by all of her family for the decision she was making, God saw. And God caused the story to be told throughout Israel so that righteous men like Boaz were astonished at this character. And it's actually this character that then makes Boaz essentially charge all of his men to just like leave big heaps and piles of grain throughout the rest of the day so that she has more than enough. That's a word for you young ladies today. God sees your character. God sees the way that you are seeking to honor him. And God sees that as the most beautiful thing about you. Our world holds up standards of physical beauty that's just outrageous. Nobody can measure up to it. But what God looks at is the heart. He looks at the faith that we are seeking to demonstrate. And you can know that you are beautiful in his eyes if you are truly seeking to follow him. So notice what happens with Naomi after this. Ruth comes back. Just imagine her carrying more bundles of grain than she could ever carry, basically taking multiple trips and just continuing to bring in more and more and more and more stuff, almost like somebody who was at a carnival just kept winning stuffed animals, and you're like, man, somebody paid for you to play that game a lot, and you realize that guy probably liked you. When she comes back with all this grain, Naomi's like, something's up. Okay, you can just stumble upon that. What happened? This is what she says. "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Essentially, like there's no other reason why you could have all that grain. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So there's a reason why Naomi gets super excited here. It's because not only is Boaz a righteous dude who's apparently pretty well off, who's taken notice of her, and maybe is a potential spouse for Ruth, he's also a close relative. In Israel, you really couldn't actually reclaim your land unless you had a living male, and you were able to have children to then live in the land. So a close relative was able to marry a widow in order to raise up offspring for her to continue to possess the land. Boaz fits that description. And so Naomi is just blown away by this. This is amazing. God has provided for us. God has given us not only somebody that seems to be interested in you, but also somebody that can actually redeem you, buy you land, and raise up children for you. And all of this, guys, is happening because of Ruth's faith. Ruth demonstrated a gritty, determined faith against all odds to follow the God of Israel and to cling to Naomi, even when the whole world that she knew was against it. And God brought remarkable provision into her life. So we can know that God really does see our faith in the hard times when no one else cares that we're trying to follow him. But we can also know that Boaz, though he's the Redeemer, who's apparently going to come and buy this land for Ruth, hopefully, we can actually know that that's pointing to a different Redeemer. It's pointing to Christ. That Christ is actually the one who comes to us, sees us as our helpless, vulnerable status, and he says to us, you know what? I will not only provide for you, I will buy you land. Christ paid a price for us by laying down his life and spilling his blood. And then he promises that one day he will take us to be in the city of heaven where we will live with God forever. And so even as Boaz is this amazing source of hope for Naomi and Ruth, Christ should be so much more a source of hope for you as you seek for faith today, as you seek to follow him, as you seek to continue following him in the hard times and in the hard places. So be freshly aware today that Boaz might have loved Ruth, who was so weak, and that's wonderful. But so much more, Christ loves you no matter how weak or frail you are if you step forward and follow him in faith. He loves you with that. All right, well, I hope you're liking these times, and we'll see you next time with Ruth 3.